Hello and welcome, at last, to a very special How I Paint Things. Now today we're going to go over a request that was made probably more than a year ago on how I paint my Blood Bowl teams. There are a lot of ways that you can adapt this to other teams, so I'm painting a human lineman here, but as you can see, the basics of it are going to work pretty well for just about anything. This is all going to be using Army Painter products, and I'll list those in the description below. So without any further mucking around, let's get straight back into it. Now to start off with, I've hit him with a primer of Skeleton Bone, which is probably one of my favorite primers anywhere. I use it for all sorts of things, and as you see, it's got just a little bit of color to it. It's a nice bone color, funnily enough. Now this is going to form the basis for a lot of things like our laces and his undershirt? Goodness me. But we're going to concentrate first of all on areas where we're actually likely to make little mistakes, because if we start from those areas, when we paint over the top of them, it will save us a little bit of time overall versus painstakingly going back and fixing up, the last stage. So we're going to start with his skin, which, as you can see, has actually got a fair bit of detail around it. I've got a little bit of barbarian flesh and just a wee bit of water in my brush here. I'm using the character brush here, and all I'm going to do is go around and just touch in his skin fairly carefully. Like, if I can avoid having to do any cleanup, all the better. But just anywhere that his skin is showing through on his uniform, normally one coat of this will do the job. If you need to, give it about 5 minutes. You can go back and give it another thin coat. Now, as you can see there, we've got a nice smooth flesh tone on his skin there. Really quick and simple. Working from such a light primer is going to really help out. And with skin tones in particular, I find that a little bit of warmth in Skeleton Bone is going to work quite well. What I've got now is some Monster Brown, and we're going to stick to our character brush for this, because we're going to do any little straps and what have you. So on the back of his legs here, for example, he's got this strap holding his, knee pads on. All we'll do is any straps, laces and what have you that you want to touch in here, you can just go ahead and give them a coat of Monster Brown. So I'll do his belt, just little bits here, anything like this, just go ahead. And likewise, this will probably only take one coat. If it doesn't, of course, you know what to do. Now, as you can see, that doesn't take very long at all. There's not really a huge amount of this sort of stuff on the model. If you wanted to, you could also do in his socks the same color. I'm planning I'll probably leave them this beige color, to be perfectly honest, just to save some time. But again, that's really up to you. What I've got now, though, this is some demonic yellow. I also quite like Phoenix Flame, I think is the name of the color. It's a little bit more orange than this. But once we've put a shade over the top of this, it's going to look a lot different. So as always, just a little bit of water in your paint to thin it out, and you'll see how smooth that goes on. What we'll do is go over all of his armor plates. So all of these thigh diddlies and what have you, knee pads and the like. With yellow, you'll find Skeleton Bone does help quite a bit with the coverage. If there's any areas that you need to, of course, as always, just go back, give them another coat of this. But this does not take particularly long to put on at all. Now that yellow covered in most of those areas with just 2 coats. Across the shoulder pads, though, I did go back with a 3rd coat just to make sure that I was going to get a nice, even coverage. With some of these lighter colors, you are still going to get some visible brush strokes if you're not careful about how you apply it. What's important is that once you've put one coat down, let it dry all the way through before you start painting over it again. Otherwise, that water in the fresh paint is just going to muck up the stuff underneath, lift it up, and you'll get a gritty surface, which is not too pleasant to paint over. What I'm going to do now, though, I've got some gunmetal. On another color, say blue or green or something, I might do gold or a brassy tone at this point. But because this fella's going to have a lot of brighter colors on him, I'm going to go for a nice dark metal. And this will not take too long. Just any areas that I want to be, gunmetal. We'll go over, and some of these areas are going to need just the one coat. But as always, if you do polish them off, I think they're going to look better with a second. Just let this dry, and then come back and give them another coat. Now, all of that metal went on in one coat. I'll be honest with you, Army Painter's metallics are probably some of my favorite on the market at the moment because they're very smooth. They do just go on like nobody's business. Now, I said I was probably going to skip this part, but I lied. I think this will look much better if we go ahead and we do paint in his socks. So I've got some arid earth. Now, any old color will probably do the job here. We're not adding much, just that little bit to break up his legs. And then still with our regiment brush, let's just go ahead, put some leather brown on his shoes. Now this will not take long at all. I've also done the little pads underneath his knee pads in that leather brown as well, because I think it looks a little bit better to break them up. I don't want to do the whole thing in yellow, but that looks pretty cool. What I've got now is I'm going to use a contrast color just to add a little bit more visual interest to his body armor. So I've got Mars Red. Now this is, oh boy, yeah, this is almost not a red. This is really more of an orange, but yeah, just anywhere that you fancy that you think is going to benefit from a little bit of extra color. Now obviously you don't have to go mad with that. It's really up to you how much sort of extra color you want to add. I see people doing some frankly fantastic stuff. Now I have deliberately left this big panel on his back the same yellow as the rest of his armor, and that's going to be because when we get around to adding the decal, remember that you are standing behind these players, so keeping it legible for yourself, I reckon that's the better way to go. What I've got now though is some soft tone, and I've got the large dry brush. This wedge tip is going to come in really handy for this. What we're going to do, load that brush up with soft tone straight out of the pot, and let's just go crazy with it. You're going to cover the whole model and then give this about 30 minutes or so to dry. What you want to make sure as you're adding this on is that it's getting into all of the recesses and that you are working fairly quickly. It doesn't have to be instant, but make sure you're getting it on before it can dry in one place. Let's see what we've got when this is finished. Now, once he's had plenty of time to dry, this is what we've got. And to be quite honest, I call him done. A little bit grubby maybe, but all of that shading is in place. You could go back now, go with a little bit of demon yellow over some of the flat plates, or you could just edge highlight it from here if that's what you wanted to do to bring that up a little bit more. A bit of moon dust, I think, would be your best color for that. Same too with his trousers and stuff. If you wanted to highlight that, you could go nuts. You could do more from here. But I reckon that's a painted Blood Bowl player. You don't have to spend forever on each and every one of them. These guys are going to look fine as a team. And Blood Bowl, I think, more than the other games, it's a board game. I don't mean that as a negative thing. What I mean is that all you need to be able to see is what each player is. So with his decal on the back of him there, nice simple paint job like that, hey, it's a lineman. You're going to have a few of those to get through. So what I'm going to do now is quickly hit him with a varnish, and then we'll get his base on him, see what he looks like when he's ready for the table. And there we have it, our Blood Bowl lineman is complete. And I know that some of you are going to point out that I've covered the hole on his base for the ball, but my players don't know what a ball is, so I'm not too worried about that. As you can see, once he's actually got his base on him, he looks done. To be perfectly honest, there are a lot of ways that you can adapt this to other teams as well. Just use a different primer spray. So with this fella, obviously, I've used Skeleton Bone, which, again, I love to bits. But if you were painting Skaven, maybe start with Fur Brown and then paint on their armor. Or for a Nurgle team, you might start with Necrotic Flesh. You might use Crystal Blue primer for the new Dwarf team, for example. And in just a few minutes, this guy took me probably 15 minutes or so, and that's not a bad turnout. If you've got limited time to get a team on the table, I don't know, I reckon you could do worse than this. So as always, guys, hopefully something that was interesting to you. The lighting has been a bit of a challenge with this new camera. I hope that it's been a little bit easier, for you guys to be able to see, though things have been all over the place while I've been trying to work out what is the sweet spot on this thing. So, If it's a little difficult to spot, then I do apologize, guys. As always, you can feel free to drop a comment in the old box below. I've got a few to catch up on now, but if you want to say hi or request something new, by all means, I am looking forward to hearing what people want to see. So thank you very much for your time, and you all enjoy the rest of your day.